everyone, this is Jill Hurst. We're just getting ready to start our Zip Chat today. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started today on our episode 17, low-code platforms. And I'd like to introduce our host, Mike Watson. Mike, I'm turning it over to you.
Thanks, Jill. Welcome everyone to this episode of Zip Chat. It's number 17, low-code platforms, game changer or hype. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about this low-code platforms and, even maybe perhaps give you some perspective on what the experience is, not only selecting, but moving forward with a platform like this. I think a lot of the benefits some are obvious, and, part of the sales pitch, I guess, but some of them are not as obvious, and hopefully we can uncover those and enlighten everyone as part of this. So with me today, I have a few panelists. I have Richard Nolan. He's an architect here at Accelerate. And I have Paula Kilty, who is with Kumis, and she is a manager in the credit underwriting department. And also with me is Tim Clark. And Tim is also with Accelerate, and he's director of R&D. Did I get that right, Tim? Awesome.
Yep.
All right, so let's quickly do a poll. We usually like to start these things off with polls, get a little feel for what the audience has on their mind, and then maybe we can leverage that as we go through this Zip Chat. So we're just wondering who's joining us today. What role do you take in your organization? We picked out a few here. These are kind of generalized. Pick something that's best suited. Some of you might be multiple. Choose the one that you think is most interesting. I like to call myself an architect, even though I'm not. Although I was, for those that have been listening to Zip Chats in the past, I have been an architect. All right, so how are we doing?
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll, and I'll show you the results.
Awesome. So mostly others. It'd be interesting to know what that other category we missed is, but yeah, maybe we can learn about that as we go. If anyone, one of the things about Zip Chat is we do encourage questions, and we try to make this as interactive as possible. That's why we're not running a slide deck. We're not doing a presentation. This is really a casual fireside chat style interaction. So let's jump into it. Let's get the panelists involved. So Tim, I know these low-code, no-code platforms have been around for a while. They've definitely gained momentum in the market in the last several years. Why do you think that is? What's happening in the world that's creating that traction?
The platforms are definitely maturing, and organizations are starting to see the benefits. So as you start looking at low-code, no-code, and the sorts of benefits or the abilities of the platform that sort of set it apart from traditional development. With traditional development, you're sitting at your keyboard, you're banging code in, you compile it, you test it and hope it runs. Low-code, no-code is very different. You're building apps sort of in real time with a mouse, drag and drop, creating your process models like you would in Visio, doing some configuration, and watching it as you build it interact with your data in real time.
Okay, great. So Richard, kind of expanding on that, what do you think the key features are for a no-code, low-code platform?
Yeah, Tim stated the real advantage from the developer perspective, and I think some of the key factors from a business user perspective, and certainly from a leadership decision maker perspective, are the speed of deployment of your applications, the involvement of your user community who are consuming those applications, getting to see more frequent releases, getting to see them during design time. And I think that leads to just a better overall acceptance of the application, leads to better application development period because you're actually getting an opportunity to get feedback much more quickly. And I think also it doesn't prevent you from dealing with complex challenges in your business environment with these platforms. You still have a lot of tools available to you that you'd have in a traditional development environment, but what they've done is they've given you a rapid path to quick answers.
Yeah, right. Those are some good points. So let's see what else we have here. So Tim, I think I got another question for you along these same lines. So, sorry, got a little distracted there. So, so you've been working with several clients on this technology, and we're trying to figure out. So, what I'm trying to figure out is why would you use this technology, right? Like, what makes us want to use technology like this no-code, low-code versus some other solution?
The primary reason is to get to value so much faster than you ever could with traditional technologies. And in our cases, and some industry analysts have done research on this and proved that you can get into production between 10 and 20 times faster using low-code, no-code technologies than you can with traditional development methods and architectures like Java or .NET or what have you. But it's more than just speed to development. You have to be able to trust what you're building on. So the platforms in recent years have become much more capable of implementing the complex business processes and case management that you need to run your business. For example, several years ago, if you looked at industry analyst leader Magic Quadrant or Wave or whatever have you, for the leader in BPM or case management, years ago you might have seen tools like IBM Lombardi. You may have seen tools like FileNet P8 in those quadrants. But today, when you look at who the leader is in BPM and case management, you'll see the low-code players up there. So it's really matured in the capabilities that it offers to compete with those long-time leaders in those spaces. It's also, as you look at low-code, no-code, a lot of the times you're looking at cloud offerings. They're going to offer you whatever they have on the cloud. And some of the traditional areas do that as well, right? You can build whatever you want and run it on AWS. But with the low-code cloud offerings, you also now have the sort of security and high availability that's built right into the platform for you that now your IT organization doesn't need to worry about managing. And you can get things like being certain that you have SOC2 compliance, being certain that you have HIPAA compliance, just for having the platform. You don't have to do anything special to manage it. You can be confident that you have high availability that's on the order of 1 minute recovery point objective and 4 minute recovery time objective, which is incredibly difficult and expensive to do if you're trying to manage that on your own. And then as well, recently, and especially the leading low-code platforms are sort of stepping away from proprietary formats. So some, you might have had to put your data in their own sort of proprietary database and you didn't really have access to it at all. Maybe it was embedded in their platform. But these days, they're stepping away from that. They can get to the data wherever it resides, if it's inside of a database in your own firewall. So you have complete control over your data. If you want to pull it off into a data warehouse or you want to analyze it with data visualization tools, great. It's an industry standard database modeled to your specs.
Yeah, that's interesting. So that probably helps them with their the platform's objection with lock-in and the long-term licensing deals and all that.
Yeah, for sure.
Allows a little bit more flexibility there. So that's good. Because I would imagine if someone were choosing this type of thing, that would be a major objection to moving down this path. All right, so let's bring in Paula to the conversation. So Paula, you have a different perspective than the other guys here, where you're actually a consumer of this technology and you've gotten to see it help your business. So tell us a little bit about your business and your view of how these types of solutions apply to your business.
Right, so thank you for having me. And yes, I manage a group of underwriters, new business coordinators, policy change analysts that are going to be the end users of this system. And I just wanted to talk about what's happening in our world and the environment that we're working in right now. We are creditor underwriting, and it's very different from individual underwriting that most people are familiar with. We don't have customers sitting with a licensed agent completing a comprehensive needs analysis and purchasing insurance. Creditor is tied to a loan and it's sold through a credit union. So after a loan is approved, creditor is sold on that particular loan. So our customer expectations for us are really high. They expect that we issue their insurance coverage just as quickly as their loan is approved. And we also have to satisfy two customers, the credit union, because we are business to business, and then we also service their clients and their members. So we also have the insurance that we're selling directly to them through the credit union. So we also deal with a lot of industry shifts. Right now, the underwriting industry is shifting from traditional underwriting requirements, which are invasive, blood, urine tests, to non-invasive underwriting. So we're looking now at bringing in predictive analytics, data from lifestyle apps, even facial recognition. And facial recognition is to show, you know what, a lot of, if you're a smoker or a non-smoker, they have these great apps now, which they just scan your face and they can tell with a high percentage if you're a smoker or not. We're also dealing with legislation. So on our radar right now are potential changes to the way we use gender identity, genetic information. Recently in Canada, the Fair Treatment of Consumer Guidelines were published by the Canadian Council of Insurance Regulators. We're under a lot of scrutiny by auditors. We are audited regularly, both internally and externally, which means more changes that we have to make, more recommendations. So historically, we have not been able to react quickly, if at all, to all of these changing customer expectations, industry changes, legislation, audit requirements. So the benefits to us as an organization with low code, no code is it will set us up for success now, definitely in the future, allows us to react quickly. We have reduced development time, rapid deployment. We don't have to ramp up our internal teams, and we're able to customize. And data too. We've had a history of not having data. And as you can probably tell, I'm the non-techie person on this call, so bear with me when I talk about this. We don't own our data, and every time we want to get reports or do anything, it is time consuming and like such a huge expense. So these features that for the low code, no code platform that they provide are pretty critical to us. And I really do see this as a game changer for my team in particular. And partnering with Accelerate, we're really leaning on their expertise, trying to help us sort through the complexity. And so far what we've built, it looks extremely impressive. It's intuitive, visual appealing, very efficient. We have links to documents. We've got summary panels. We've got an document upload panel, the search capability, the filters, the note taking. It's all really exciting for me right now.
And you were mentioning that, I think, you know, when we were talking about this before, that you felt like you couldn't get any changes in. Now you feel like change is somewhat
Absolutely
easy. I'll say easy, but you know, nothing is ever easy. But at least it happens. Change happens.
Right, and I can give you an example. You know, there was changes in the marijuana legislation in Canada, and we needed to make updates to some of our questions, and we had a hard time doing that. It took us weeks, months to try and get resources in order to make those changes, and it really impacted our business because we were charging, you know what, higher rates for when this marijuana change took effect, and our clients were going absolutely crazy. So I can see with this technology, we'll be able to make those changes quickly.
Yeah, that's great. That's a good success story there. So Tim, so after this, you know, obviously there's success stories and there's you know, lots of applications for this, but it's so that we can be completely transparent. What is not a good way to use no code, low code, or what types of problems aren't solved well by it?
Well, you're probably not going to create any video games with a low code, no code solution, at least not yet. It's very good at what it's designed to do. So if you're looking to solve a business application, regardless of the complexity, it's really good at that. And again, it sort of depends on the platform. There are some that are specialized in a specific space, like fraud, that it specializes in, and you can sort of branch off from there. And there are generalists as well. But in general, business applications, no code, low code is a fantastic way to build those out. Now, again, depending on the platform, there are some trade-offs. For example, with one platform or another, you might need to sort of give up pixel perfect control over what your user interface looks like. But the flip side to that, the advantage to that is you get mobile capability automatically without needing to write a separate app or do a separate compile or anything. It just automatically comes along. So you do need to look at the trade-offs for the platforms. But as far as business challenges that I would be concerned about taking on with low code, no code, none really come to mind. I've been developing business apps for 30 years, and I would go after any of those with the platforms that we use now. But I actually want to throw this a little bit to Richard. Richard's been developing in low code, no code just a little bit longer than I have. Richard, what has your experience been? Have you bumped into things in the business space that haven't been a good fit?
Yeah, I haven't actually seen a technological barrier, and I think that's really a key point. The significant difference between no-code and low-code platforms and traditional development are not in any underlying technological components or any barriers to particular problem solving. The challenges that we've run up against most significantly have been in the methodology of implementation and in the environment in which we're doing the development. So we're talking about sort of a business ideology or a business methodology that presents a bigger barrier than the technology itself. And I think that's really where the fruitful discussions begin when you start to investigate what kind of development you want to be doing. For us, we've been an agile shop since I joined Accelerate, and I've worked in other agile shops before that. And that really is a key to developing well in a no-code, low-code environment, because the two approaches, low-code, no-code, and an agile methodology, whatever you pick as your agile methodology, are extremely complementary. So I think a challenge to really highlight is if you're going into an organization that is using a waterfall methodology, you want to examine that methodology and see where you can make the best fit for plucking agile components out of it and using those as your initial developments. That way you help the organization change, and you also reap the maximum benefits from the platform.
Yeah, that's great. Great information, Richard. So I'm just looking at questions that came in from the audience. This one actually came in prior to the session, but I think it's relevant right now. So their question is there a scale, transaction volume, or complexity level that makes this not the right solution, right? Is scale ever an issue, I guess, whether it be volume of transactions or amount of hits per second or anything like that?
I'll start with that answer, and Richard might want to pile on top of it. The starting point of that answer, it depends on the platform. So you want to, when you're looking at low code, no code, that's definitely one of the things that you want to take a look at is, can the platform scale? What do they run on for the underlying architecture? What kind of volume do they do, and do their biggest clients do, especially if you're planning to host on their app servers and not something self-hosted or self-managed. But again, as far as most business problems go and performance and throughput that we've seen and we expect with the platform we're using, I don't expect or foresee any challenges with throughput for the sorts of applications that we're going to be writing or that we have written. Richard, anything to add?
Yeah, a little bit. I'll try to be brief, though. I mean, we're really talking about a huge volume of solutions, which technology has been applied, and where to find the appropriate mix. If you're doing a team workflow inside a departmental, it's a no-brainer to use no-code, low-code. There are tons of tools that will answer that particular problem. If you want to engage in lunar exploration and run your entire IT operation that supports that, low code, no code is probably not the appropriate platform. So with those two marker posts, there's probably something that brings us back down from the moon as a realistic scope of doing no code, low code. But the truth of the matter is, the technology that Tim and I are both familiar with is built on an extremely fast, high transaction volume, real-time columnar database. It's called K, is the underlying architecture for it. And that provides us with a really high upper limit for transactional volume. So where we see the boundary state for sheer size of application is probably more in your network bandwidth and your own internal infrastructure, where we're consuming your on-site data and your on-site infrastructure. And you would scale that using standard analytic tools.
Yeah, that's good. So I'm just, Jill, our producer, is letting me know there's another live question. And basically, I think, I think it's worth addressing this here is, are we using a low-code, do we have a preferred low-code platform? And I think the answer is yes. Tim, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, the answer is yes. Several years ago, when we started looking for platforms, we did take a look at all the major players at the time. For a wide variety of reasons that would probably make this chat run way too long, we chose Appian. If we want to dig a little bit deeper into that, we can. But as far as its technology, its capabilities, performance, its security, everything about it just stood head and shoulders above all of the other platforms that we looked at.
Yeah, thanks for that, Tim. So let's transition a little bit to something that's near and dear to my heart. Is I'm a process guy, right? So I love software process and figuring out how the best way to build code. And it seems to me if you're doing a no code, low code, based on what I know about it, it's not that much different than if you're doing software, right? You guys already mentioned agile, use agile methodologies. Like it just doesn't seem very, very different, right? You're still doing releases and upgrade paths and all that. So talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely, Mike. You are still, at the end of the day, you're building software. You're still building an application, right? You're just doing it a little bit differently. So all of those things that you mentioned absolutely still matter. We talked about performance a couple of minutes ago. Architecture matters. Having a good data model matters to these applications, right? You can't do that wrong if you want to have a successful application. You have to think about and understand component-based builds, maybe not so much object-oriented as you might think about in like C++ or even Java or C# or something like that, but certainly component-based, right? Because one of the big benefits of a low-code, no-code platform is reusability. And with these platforms, you're not just reusing based on pulling in a header file and saying, I want to use this class now. You're just dragging and dropping this other component that you built for this application, a month ago, and just dropping it into your application, and now it just works. But you still have to be able to think that building that as a component is valuable, and how to build it to make sure it's reusable across a bunch of different applications. You still need the good development discipline. You're still going to need to create unit tests, even though it's easier to do in low-code platforms and easier to automate in these platforms. You still need all of that discipline that you always needed as a software engineer. Now, these make a couple of things easier. Back in my C++ days, parallel processing, doing multi-threading was just a bear with semaphores and thread safety and all those other things, right? And those would break your brain and break your software so easily, especially even after you're an expert with that. And with the right low-code platform, it just builds in the parallel processing for you. I don't think we've ever looked at how to do thread safety, right? There is no consideration, right, Richard, for thread safety in these platforms. Right, but it just automatically parallelizes your processes. Similarly, mobile can be easier. I mentioned before that some of the platforms, the one we're on, basically mobile is basically free. You build your user interface using the tools, and with the technology that they have, you go to it using your tablet or your mobile device, and it just lays out the user interface correctly, and it just works. There's no new compile, there's no extra software to buy, there's no extra any of that stuff. So it's still traditional development. You still have all of those things you need to think about that you always had to as an architect or a good software developer. It's just easier to implement once you've thought about those things.
Gotcha. So, Paul, I'm going to come back to you to give us a different perspective of all of this topic, which is really you've been working with a team, pulling this together. What was your experience? What sort of wowed you or surprised you about the development experience as you went through the process?
So the biggest surprise for me, and again, I'm going to restate, being a non-technical person, was the business process modeling. It is so easy to follow, easy to understand. And it is really amazing when I see the steps that we spent months creating business workflows. We have 30 plus different workflows. They branched off into so many different places. We have complex business rules that we have to apply against applications that come in. And to see how quickly and easily it was just like, oh yeah, here, click, drop, click, drop, click, drop. Oh yeah, let's log in as an end user and click a button and see that process working. It's fast. It's very fast. We worked with Accelerate to develop a proof of concept. We were able to integrate with our underwriting rules engine. We created simple business rules. We had applications that were auto decline or approved. We had letter generation. We were able to capture the history of workflow activities. There were supervisor dashboards. They included like KPIs, charts, prioritized task lists. We had the ability to reassign work, audit logs, and really in the current environment as a manager of frontline staff, that's really critical information that I need to be able to manage staff effectively. We need to know what they're doing because we can't see them. We can't walk into an office and look and say, okay, yes, everybody's heads down and doing the work. So we're really relying on information and data generated by these tools. And huge for me is I'm the decision maker on this project for my team. And I'm very confident making decisions. I don't feel like I'm bamboozled by complex explanations about development and being deer in the headlights, going, oh, okay, I have no idea what you're talking about. Super easy to comprehend. I can see where we're at in the build. I can see how the steps are connected. I can see what the outcomes are. And one of the things that I really liked about working with this team is the approach that they're pairing up, Accelerate is pairing up with our internal team. So we're getting adequate training, once again, setting us up for success in the future. So it's been a great experience so far. We have had our own internal challenges, which I will speak to later on. But overall, yes, this is, as I said, this is fast and looks good, looks slick.
Yeah, so I know there's a couple of questions out there, Richard. So thanks for that, Paul, by the way. Fast is good. It's fast and responsive are the two things that you're saying that you're really enjoying about the process, which is great. But a couple of questions have come up around complexity, right? Either it's alluded to or it's directly asked. So how is complexity dealt with differently in no code, low code, or is it not dealt with differently? Like how do you face complexity, Richard?
Yeah, that's a great question. The tool itself, specifically the one that we're using, and I guess the elephant in the room is we're going to keep saying Appian, but and my familiarity with other tools is a little bit weaker. So I apologize that that's my area of expertise, but I'm going to run with that. The tool itself, with every release, and they typically do 4 releases per year, has done an amazing job of encapsulating very high-level complexity problems and building a response to them in their no-code, low-code environment. But I think another point is that under the hood, what you have is, a tool that has lived in the environment a long time in the ecosystem as a business process management, orchestration suite, and it still has all of those features available to it. So where you might be stymied by a business problem, and Tim talked about the need to still have some developer skills, the tool itself has a tremendous amount of depth. There's opportunities for you to go well beneath the low code, no code platform features and actually write code if you need to, going as far as to build Java extensions. So it's not particularly limiting. But the truth of the matter is now in the last 2 years, 3 years maybe of development, I mean, I haven't reached to Java in easily 12 or 13 years. And I haven't reached deeply into the richer features in the last 3 years. I mean, it's very typical that we build the entire application using no code, low code. So complexity's become far less of a barrier than it had been in the past. And it doesn't really require you to reach into that toolkit. It is important though, it's still there. You still can reach into it if you need it. So I really don't see complexity as a barrier. Again, I kind of talked about the space shuttle as being the outer limit of, you know, where I probably would treat my no-go zone, but there isn't a business process that we probably couldn't either completely or almost completely build with the low-code, no-code tool set.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about Tim's answer and actually now your answer and relating things. As an architect, you might be able to take the complex parts of, you know, telemetry gathering or whatever, and the idea of like moon exploration and the reporting and the, you know, workflows and things that you have to do behind the scenes that are boring, but still need to get done. And you could actually implement those in two different solutions that are working together, right? I mean, that would be a way to sort of take that, abstract that complexity out, and allow you to, you know, build some of the tools, you know, in this low code, no code style, and then, you know, really just focus, you know, maybe a small dedicated engineering team for that core problem that you're solving that's complex.
For sure, that's another benefit of low code, no code is they make it really easy to integrate with other services, other applications, other data. So you mentioned telemetry. If you do need like a hardware interface, sure, go ahead and code that to whatever you want. Put a microservice up to let the low code, no code platform get to it, and then write your business app with low code, no code that consumes that data.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so definitely, I think there's ways to work around complexity. There was another question rolling around in my head, my own personal question. Are there hooks and things like that that allow you to deal with complexity inside the tool, like, you know, like a call out to, like you say, a microservice where you can actually code in a traditional style, something that's some algorithm that's too complex for no code, low code? I'm assuming something like that exists, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Can I jump on that, Tim?
Please.
So almost all the platforms today have out-of-the-box features that allow you to do really easy integrations to external tools. So Tim, you know, posited an example where you might be the crafter of that. But the truth of the matter is, increasingly, the ecosystem, the global IT ecosystem, has, you know, solved and reinvented the wheel problem a million times over. And if there is a solution, typically it has an API wrapped around it. So all these platforms are really good at consuming external APIs, whether it's a RESTful API or a SOAP API, or even some, you know, odd third-party specialized mechanism. Typically, it's very easy to integrate even the most complex tool to answer a complex problem. So that's really not, it's not a barrier anymore. We found it very easy to consume something that I personally consider one of the most Byzantine data models out there, which is the Encora data model for Medical Information Bureau reporting, and it was relatively trivial to pull it all together and present those results to the underwriters for Paula's team. So I don't really see those challenges as being barriers for us anymore.
All right, that's good information. So let's pull up another poll. That's a good breaking point for that. So you in the audience, how many of you have in your company or past company used a low code, no code type framework? I'm interested how much experience is out there. So any guesses, Tim or Richard, on what the percentages will be here?
I would think that over 50% have used it, or the company has used it, current or past, over 50%.
I wonder how many people have used it and don't know it. That's actually an interesting.
That's a great point.
Right.
Yeah, because it looks exactly like everything else, right? So from a user's perspective, right? Obviously, you're a techie and you're involved in the decision-making process and you know about these things. All right, so over 50% is accurate. That's 55.
55. Yeah.
Says they've used it in the past or currently. Excellent. All right. So let's move on to the next section of topics. So, you know, we're kind of flowing here a little bit. So Paula, you mentioned organizational challenges earlier, and I'm sure some of them were painful, as like anytime you're like starting a new software project, there's always something that comes up. Tell us a little bit about your experience with this type of software engagement.
So we kicked off this project right at the beginning of the pandemic. And that in of itself was a huge challenge for us. We didn't have the right resources in place. We didn't have a lot of resource continuity. Both of those are reasons not to start a project, I would assume. We didn't also have end-to-end planning. We had a lack of end-to-end planning by our architects who were looking at the full view. We had an over-reliance on a concept of one person rather than the concept of a team working together.
Mm-hmm.
And development was quick. We got behind with requirements. There was a big bottleneck. We were writing, it's like we were documenting, and getting everything perfect before, you know what, sending it off to get developed. And I'm not that familiar with waterfall to agile. I understand the concept, but I think we were more waterfall, and although the organization had shifted to the agile methodology, we still really had challenges with this mindset. And we also started with really complex cases. And at the time, there were reasons for doing that. But in hindsight, we had 10 different work streams, and we didn't focus on, you know, working on our least complex to our most complex processes. So we've learned a lot with this, using this tool, and, you know, we really are taking a step back and getting ourselves reorganized right now to approach this a little differently than what we had originally.
Yeah, so I think I heard you saying that you had to ramp up on your side a lot more than the developers had to ramp up on the development side to get the flow at the appropriate level, right? I mean, the team was moving so fast that you needed more requirements analysts or whatever type of role is necessary.
It was work, and we're like, we're not ready. And,
yeah, I mean, I don't think I've ever seen that before in, you know, any of my traditional engineering engagements where it wasn't the development team that's saying we need more people in order to meet your requirements that you're throwing down our.
Right, and we did do a lot of upfront work. We did have we did a lot of assessment. We did a lot of looking at our current system, what the pain points are, the you know, what we wanted, really understanding our business processes inside and out. And it started off great, and then we got further behind. And you know what, I'm not involved in all of the ins and outs of what's happening in the background, but from my perspective, it's like, okay, well, what is happening here? Well, let's just get something moving. Let's just focus on our happy path. You know what? And for me, it was hard because at the POC, the proof of concept, it was just like, boom, a couple of weeks, and we had so much functionality built in the system. So it was hard to really see us struggling when we started this, that we kicked off this project. So as I said, we've learned a lot, and we're really grateful to have the partnership that we have with Accelerate, who are really helping us, as I said earlier, through this whole process.
Yeah, like I was saying earlier, software process is one of the things I really excites me, and which probably makes me weird in the community. But just hearing the story that you had this sort of big upfront kind of thinking process, and that you probably didn't start really moving on some of the key user-facing functionality until you made some of those decisions. And that's kind of the antithesis of agile, and where it's like let's figure out something that can be useful, and then let's get that going. And it seems to me that you're moving more in that direction now, and hopefully that really works out well for you.
Yeah, I think you really do have to trust the process, and just start small and keep building, which is what it's really hard, I think, for people to step back and do that and fail and pick it up and start it again. It's been very difficult. We think that and my team thinks that, once something is finalized, that's it. We'll never be able to change it. We'll be stuck with this process. We'll be doing manual workarounds. And that's been our experience, to be quite honest, over the last 10 years. We've got so many manual workarounds in place right now because we don't have the people, we don't have the resources, we don't have the dollars to make these changes.
That's a really interesting point. You've been trained to be cautious, to turn over all the rocks and make sure you're really ready before you ask anyone to help you. Yeah.
And I would, if my one piece of advice is you really need to trust this process and just keep, just starting small and just keep building.
Yeah, great. So Tim, talking about success points, what do you think is important for having these projects go well?
So I'm chuckling because Paula just stole a bunch of my thunder on that question. But we encounter a lot of organizations that are coming from waterfall into agile as they're also coming into this low-code technology, which, as Richard said, does lend itself so well to agile because you can build so quick with it, right? But one of the things that you'll see in organizations that are coming from waterfall into agile is a resistance to change, or maybe a fear of change, because although compared to building a building, changing software isn't that expensive, but changing software is still expensive, at least in the old way of doing things, where you have to plan it and code it and test it and all that stuff, right? Where you can't just change it and see the change almost in real time. So a big part of the success of using these technologies is really embracing agile. You can build fast. You can get feedback almost instantaneously. In fact, one of the things that was really cool for me to see as we first started embracing this technology and putting it out in front of customers is we would be doing a demo, and the customer would say, "Can you change this?" And then the next time we came around to the screen in that same demo, it was changed. So you have that sort of, capability and speed to make change happen. So you have to trust agile, and you actually have to take that huge leap of faith to say change is easy. It's not going to kill my project. It's not going to hurt me. I can change it. But the other thing, and this is one thing that the Cumis team is absolutely phenomenal at, and that is everybody is engaged. A lot of times, as a partner, we're kind of coming into IT and they're keeping us at arm's length from the business and all that kind of stuff. That no matter how you're building the software, that doesn't work as well as getting everybody engaged. So get the business engaged, get your power users engaged, make sure your business leader is engaged, and make sure IT is engaged so they know what's going on and that they're ready to support you, when it comes on down the line. And then finally, starting small and getting that quick win, there's nothing like it, right? Whether that's a small project or it's the simple happy path through a bigger project, it's still the agile sort of methodology and thought process of start small, get that win, and then just keep on building out the complexity or the capability from that win and keep winning it. And doing that is also part of what builds that trust that change isn't really going to be painful. It's not going to hurt me. This is awesome. I can change this to be exactly what I need when the next regulation comes around or when I want to offer my next product that I need to modify this application to support.
Yeah, I think that last point, it's very, very much the reason Agile exists, I would say. is we need to, software engineers at some point, software people just said to themselves, we need to deliver more frequently, customer value more frequently. Like that's really important, right? And so I think if we look at tools that allow us to move rapidly, to validate rapidly, so folks on the business side can look at these changes and say, yes, those changes totally make sense. Let's go ahead and release those. I think that really goes, like you said, it goes well with Agile. It goes well with this tool set. And for a large variety of problems, you can apply this exactly like that, which is great. So Richard, what are we missing here? Like, is there anything else that you think are, key success factors?
I don't think we missed anything. There are a few things that I might elaborate a little on, and those are really that we've kind of talked very broadly about Agile, but these no-code, low-code tools really are the manifestation of Agile, and it's really key to partner with someone who is familiar with Agile and understands how, if you as a customer are a waterfall-based organization, even if, as Paula said, she's not really familiar deeply with waterfall, but the kind of very traditional project management methodologies associated with software development, picking a partner that can help you transition to Agile and really reap the benefits of it, that's a key component. And I think the other thing, and Tim alluded to it, but it has been a surprising part of the evolution of development in my lifetime. And again, I don't know which of us, Tim or I, have been at this longer. I'll put the flag out there that I learned COBOL in school, so maybe that makes me the slightly more aged developer.
Yeah,
but
I did too.
But the truth of the matter is that that the tool is gone as a barrier. The evolution for me has been, what this allows you to do is to really embed with the business, deeply engage in their day-to-day problems and challenges, and provide short-term and long-range alleviation of those business problems really easily. So I think the most critical success factor is the partnership, irrespective of the tool. It's putting the right people in the room to deliver the right business solution. And we've been extremely lucky in that, despite Cumus's transition from Agile to Waterfall, they are the poster child for a great project development effort, in that we've had everybody who we've needed in the room with us, from data architects to data support people to internal developers to the business users themselves, all the way up to the executive team. It has absolutely been a fantastic experience, and it's representative, I think, of what can go right when everyone's in the room.
Yeah, that's great. So, Paula, I think we'll end with this, which is, what advice do you have from business side? Like, when you're considering going down this path and you have choices, like what would you want? What decision factors would you really think about for no code, low code?
Well, I think the key, as Richard said, is you got to pick a good partner, and you have to form a partnership with the team that you're working on. For me, it's the Accelerate team. They just bring a fresh perspective, really, on some things that we think are challenging, and the mentality of that we've always done it that way. So I think, yes, the partnership, trusting that partnership, and staying involved at every step. For me, as a manager, I took a step back at the beginning of the project, which was a mistake, and jumping back in with both feet. But yeah, the partnership is so critical, and being able to, as I said, help, guide, educate, train every step of the way.
Yeah, and I think
it's been fun working with the team. I'm sure we annoy them sometimes, but overall,
yeah,
I really have increased my vocabulary working with Richard. 100%.
Well, that's a interesting side effect of the engagement. Yeah, so just circling back, I think this partnership concept you're talking about, but like really engaging from the client side with the software project team. Whenever I've seen that in my 20 plus year history of doing these types of things, I've seen success, right? So I mean, all of this sounds right to me. It's not that much different, like we were saying earlier, than any other kind of software process, except for maybe faster, and you have to develop less things, right? One of the things I think, intuitively in my mind is, and I think Richard, you gave this example, is you were struggling with some problem, like a jagged chart or something. I don't remember exactly what your story was, but one day, so you were frustrated with it and you kind of put it aside, and then 2 weeks later, you went back to it and the chart was no longer jagged. It actually worked the way you wanted it to do it, because other developers, not you, were working on it behind the scenes, unbeknownst to you. And I think that's kind of a cool side effect of working with platforms like this. Is it's not all just you doing the work. There's other smart people working behind the scenes, making reducing complexity, as you called it earlier. So I think that's very cool. All right, so Jill, are there any other questions out there that we've missed? Maybe we should hit real quick. From the audience.
No more that have come in from the audience.
Okay. So there's one that came prior, and this is kind of a technical question, but it's basically, how do you deal with change management, right? Like, and also, how do you deal with configuration, right? So there's things that are like, usually, you have code, and then if you put it in this environment versus that environment, there's configuration parameters. Like, does it have a good solution for promoting from a staging environment to a production environment and dealing with all those challenges?
Yeah, that's been very interesting. Sorry, I'll jump on that if you're okay, Tim.
Yeah, perfect.
There's been much like everything to do with software development, the evolution is constant. Where we are today with configuration management and code deployment is really a tightly governed DevOps model. Certainly with Appian, it's really easy to have environment-specific configurations. The software tool allows for a pass-along bundle of database configuration scripts. You can actually run business processes post-installation to ensure that you bring the new environment up to speed. The governance model is such that you can actually work within specified maintenance windows and specified risk categories and allow for people to actually okay during a maintenance window release. Even full releases, the framework is so deft that you're not consuming hours and hours and hours of time waiting for your code deployment. It has been extremely rare for me to see anything over 2 minutes doing a deployment from one environment to another. So, and again, you're enjoying, if you're on a cloud platform, which is Appian's typical release, you're enjoying all the benefits associated with that. So you have these high availability environments that provide for lots of security. If I step back for a second and I talk about code management schemes, natively the tool is built in. So you have almost infinite revisions to step back through. And those are coordinated revisions. The opportunity is there to ensure that if you step back in one tool, that you step back in the other tools, because there's very tight bindings between the objects in Appian. And so it's just become less of a problem. I mean, you also have the ability, there's no reason not to actually remove your code from the platform, make a local copy and insert it into an SVN type repository or some other code repository tools. The challenge with that is it's just extra overhead that you don't need. I mean, if you're a belt and suspenders organization and you want to ensure that you've got, very, very, very accurate and multiple and duplicate versions of your code in a variety of repositories, you can do that. But I have long since relaxed and let go of that as an objective. So from a tool perspective, that's the least time of my day is concerning myself with multiple environments and code management. I don't really have to worry about that anymore.
So it's all built into the platform, is what you're saying. Like,
that's correct.
What you would expect in those types of problems are solved. Like, that complexity is reduced for you, or at least made available directly to the platform, so you don't have to do anything special.
Absolutely. I will caution, however, you're also probably consuming your internal database infrastructure and possibly other tools internally through APIs. So you still have to exhibit the discipline that you would deal with any software development application, and that you've got to make sure you're aware of where you're exceeding your boundaries.
Makes sense. So another question, I'm just going to take a part of the question because I think the whole question might be too much for the remaining time, which is only about 5 minutes. Multi-tenancy, is that a problem that can be solved with a low-code platform? So you're a provider of a SaaS system that has several different customer, within it. Is that something that we can solve that way? So think of a SaaS provider, right? Can you build a SaaS provider tool that has multiple, individual customers in it, and managing their data separately?
Well, yeah, for sure you could, because ultimately you're just building software the way you would with traditional tools, right? And you're not limited with these platforms to point at a specific database. So you could create a different database per customer or whatever. I wonder why you would want to do multi-tenancy when it's so easy just to spin up another server and have it single tenant. I want to explore that a little deeper before I said, yeah, let's do multi-tenancy.
Yeah, I think that might be the right answer. I mean, it depends on, all this always comes down to licensing and scalability and like all the things on the architecture side. So I think the question is, could you do it? And I think the answer is yes, right?
Yes.
It's not one of those problems like video games that you just wouldn't go there.
Right.
Wouldn't go there. Understood. Okay. So there's one last question that came in from the audience. It's a live question, so I'd like to hit it real quick. So what's your wish list for a company like Appian, right? Like what's on that wish list? What do you really wish that they would push forward, as a priority?
I'm constantly surprised by them beating me to my wish list. I don't particularly want to blow any particular vendor's horn, and I'm sure my experience is largely with Appian. But the truth of the matter is they're often beating me to the punch. In fact, I see features emerge that there's been a niggling item in the back of my head that, oh yeah, I should really address that at some point with Appian because that's something. Oh, they fixed it. Never mind. So so I really don't. From our perspective, they are the perfect partner for a no-code, low-code development platform. And having said that, they have made a very deep pattern of reaching out to us specifically to ask those very questions, which I think, given that they're doing that with so many of their partner organizations, is the answer why they do beat us to the punch.
Gotcha. So there's not really a huge list pending out there.
We have a couple of tiny little enhancement requests that are out to Appian. They're just minor. The big one on my wish list is blockchain. Make it easier for us to do blockchain. But how are you going to do that? And and figure out how to do that low code, no code. That would be incredible.
Yeah, they're probably working on that too. Who knows? All right. Well, I think we've reached the end of time. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Those of you in the audience, without you, this doesn't make a lot of sense for us to be chatting away. Also, I really want to extend a thank you to my panelists, Richard, Paula, and Tim. I very much appreciated the prep time that we had together and this session, this live session as well. It's been really fun. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Everyone have a great day.